Welcome, everyone. This video is about understanding anxiety, reassurance seeking, and the deep need to feel secure and capable in relationships. I'll be sharing insights from my own self development journey and from supporting a child through developmental challenges using theories from lifespan human development to make sense of it all. I'll show how the same unmet needs can appear in childhood and adulthood, and how understanding development can lead to real change. This video is based directly on my self development and other development projects from this course, where I applied lifespan development theory to real experiences. The goal of this video is not to explain theories in a textbook way, but to show how these theories actually explain real struggles. Whether you're navigating anxiety in relationships yourself or supporting children who may seem overly dependent, impulsive, or sensitive, understanding development helps us respond with greater clarity and compassion. The common developmental challenge I'm focusing on is the struggle to feel secure, emotionally, socially, and relationally. This can look like anxious attachments in adults or a strong need to feel helpful and capable in children. One of the most important things I learned in this course is that development doesn't stop after childhood. Early experiences shape us, but they don't disappear with age. If certain emotional needs aren't fully met early on, they don't disappear. They often show up later in different forms. The good news is that growth and healing are always possible. In my self development project, I focused on anxious attachment. I noticed that when relationships felt uncertain, I became anxious, overthought situations, and sought constant reassurance in order to feel emotionally stable. One thing I became very aware of during this project was how automatic my anxious responses were. I wouldn't even realize I was seeking reassurance. I just felt an urgent need to feel okay again. That urgency is something I had never really focused on before this course. What made this worth focusing on was how long this pattern had been present in my life. This wasn't a single relationship or phase, it was something I could trace across time. Any situation where closeness felt uncertain seemed to activate the same emotional response. I didn't initially label it as anxious attachment. I just thought I was careful, aware, or emotionally invested. But through this course, I began to see that what I was experiencing had a clear developmental explanation. Seeking reassurance made me feel better temporarily, but it also reinforced the idea that I couldn't regulate my emotions on my own. Over time, this led to stress, emotional exhaustion, and strain in relationships. For me, anxious attachment often showed up internally long before it showed up outwardly. Even small shifts, a change in tone, delayed responses, or emotional distance felt magnified in my body. I noticed that my thoughts would race and I would start mentally reviewing conversations, searching for what I might have done wrong. It wasn't always logical, but it felt urgent. What stood out was how uncomfortable uncertainty felt. Sitting without answers wasn't neutral. It felt distressing, and that discomfort drove my need for reassurance. Learning about attachment theory helped everything click for me. It explains how our early relationships shape the way we connect with others, and it made me realize that my anxious attachment didn't just come out of nowhere. When caregiving early on is inconsistent, people can learn to stay on high alert in relationships, and those patterns can carry into adulthood. Seeing it this way completely changed how I viewed my reactions. Instead of labeling myself as overreacting or too much, I began to understand these responses as learned and protective. My nervous system wasn't being dramatic, it was doing what it learned to do to stay safe in relationships. Erickson's trust versus mistrust stage helped me put my anxiety into a developmental context. Learning about this stage made me realize that early experiences related to trust don't stay confined to childhood. They shape how safe we feel relying on others later in life. That understanding helped explain why uncertainty felt so overwhelming for me as an adult. It wasn't just inconvenient or uncomfortable, it felt unsafe. Seeing my reactions through this developmental lens helped me understand why my emotional responses were so strong, even in situations that didn't objectively call for that level of distress. One important realization was that anxious behaviors can actually feel strangely comforting because they're familiar. What surprised me was realizing that my anxious behaviors were actually being reinforced. Getting reassurance did calm me down, but it also taught my brain that I needed it to feel okay, which made the anxiety come back stronger the next time. Sitting with uncertainty felt scary at first, but learning self regulation was necessary for long term growth. Instead of trying to eliminate anxiety entirely, I focused on simplifying the task and reframing what progress actually meant. I began tracking small, intentional behaviors, becoming more aware of triggers, waiting before seeking reassurance, and using basic calming strategies. I used a simple anxious attachment reflection sheet with regular check ins, which allowed me to notice patterns over time, areas of growth, and moments where I still struggle. Through this process, I realized that success wasn't about whether anxiety showed up, but about how I responded when it did. Tracking my responses helped me recognize that even delaying reassurance, rather than eliminating it, was a meaningful step toward regulation. These small shifts helped me build emotional independence, develop patience with myself, and understand that growth doesn't require perfection. In my other development project, I worked closely with an elementary age child who was identified as gifted and also diagnosed with ADHD. She was incredibly bright, curious, and eager to help, and she genuinely wanted to contribute in the classroom. However, her strong desire to be useful often showed up as impulsive behaviors like blurting out, interrupting others, or correcting classmates mid conversation. Her behavior wasn't rooted in defiance or attention seeking, it was rooted in a deep need to feel capable and valued. Although her intentions were positive, these behaviors led to frequent redirection from adults and growing frustration from peers. Over time, this type of social feedback can become emotionally risky. When children consistently hear what they're doing wrong, even when they're trying to help, they may begin to internalize the belief that they are the problem. I became concerned that without appropriate support, this child was at risk of developing feelings of inferiority despite her strong abilities and motivation. Erickson's industry versus inferiority stage helped me understand her behavior in a developmental context. During this stage, children are working to develop a sense of competence by meeting expectations set by others, especially in school. When children experience success and positive feedback, they develop confidence and a sense of competency. But when their efforts are misunderstood or repeatedly corrected without skill building support, they may begin to doubt their abilities. In this case, the child's drive toward industry was clear. She just needed support that aligned with her developmental needs. The first strategy I implemented was assigning meaningful classroom roles that aligned with her need to feel capable and helpful. She was given specific responsibilities, such as managing materials for her group and serving as a classroom technician to ensure devices were organized and charged. These roles were intentional. They allowed her to contribute in appropriate, structured ways while giving her a sense of purpose and ownership. Most importantly, these responsibilities reduced the need for her to insert herself into situations in ways that caused disruption. The second strategy focused on teaching skills rather than relying on constant correction. I provided a visual, friendly thinking anchor chart that outlined strategies for active listening, turn taking, and pausing before speaking. This tool shifted responsibility from adult redirection to self regulation. Instead of being corrected publicly, she could independently reference the chart and make more thoughtful choices. This reduced feelings of shame and supported her emotional development. Over time, these strategies led to noticeable changes. Her interruptions decreased, her peer interactions improved, and she appeared more confident in her role within the classroom. She was still engaged and helpful, but in ways that supported both her success and the learning environment. These supports helped guide her toward a sense of industry rather than inferiority, reinforcing the idea that when developmental needs are met intentionally, positive growth naturally flows. This experience led to one of the most important insights of the project for me. The child I was supporting and my own anxious attachment were driven by the same underlying need. She sought usefulness in order to feel secure and valued, while I sought reassurance for the very same reason. Although the behaviors looked different, they were both responses to a core developmental question. Am I safe? Do I matter? Recognizing this connection shifted something deeply for me. Behaviors that once felt frustrating, confusing, or even overwhelming began to make sense. Instead of viewing overhelpfulness or reassurance seeking as problems to fix, I started to see them as signals of unmet needs. That shift allowed me to respond with more empathy and patience, not only toward others, but toward myself, making space for understanding, intentional support, and meaningful growth. One of the most important lessons I took away from this experience is how deeply development influences the way we interpret ourselves and others. When we understand behavior through a developmental lens, it becomes easier to move away from judgment and toward curiosity. That shift allows us to respond more thoughtfully, whether we're supporting someone else or reflecting on our own patterns. For adults who experience anxious attachment, growth often begins with awareness rather than change. Noticing triggers, pausing before seeking reassurance, and practicing simple, self soothing strategies can gradually build emotional security. These steps may feel small, but over time they support greater independence and self trust. Growth feels uncomfortable, but it is possible. When supporting children, it's important to look beneath the behavior and consider what developmental need might be driving it. Offering meaningful responsibility, explicitly teaching skills, and reducing shame based correction can help children feel capable and supported. These intentional responses foster confidence and healthy development. Developmental struggles are not character flaws. They are signals pointing toward unmet needs. When we approach those signals with understanding rather than judgment, we create opportunities for growth, both for ourselves and those we support. Whether you're healing yourself or supporting a child, understanding development can give you real tools to create positive change at any stage of life. I hope these insights encourage you to reflect on your own journey or the needs of someone you care about and take that next small step forward.